Hi everyone, Abby here, and welcome back to my channel, AbbyBCruising, or welcome if you're new. Here on this channel, I do cruise ship reviews and traveling content. And today, I'm going to be reviewing Royal Caribbean's Odyssey of the Seas cruise ship, a ship that I recently got off of. I did a 7-night sailing out of New Jersey for a Bahamas cruise. I left in December, and you guys will see the festive vibes throughout the video. And this is one of Royal Caribbean's most technologically advanced ships that they have. So I'm going to go over the good and the bad on this cruise ship that I experienced. I'm going to be talking about food, the price, entertainment, activities, customer service, the room, and more. But before I get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed so you can stay tuned to all my new videos dropping monthly and so you can help the channel grow. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers on this new channel here. You guys recently got me to 300 subscribers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you who have subscribed. And for those of you who have not subscribed yet, come on, subscribe and join the family. I'm going to be dropping a lot more cruise content this year in 2026. So as I mentioned, this cruise ship did start off in New Jersey. It started off at Cape Liberty Cruise Port. I did this cruise in December in New Jersey. It was snowing. It was the first time I've ever started off a cruise in snow, so that was definitely a strange experience. I came from Canada in snow, and then I arrived in America in snow. So when I did arrive to the cruise port, there was a good amount of traffic. So I definitely recommend trying to leave at least like 15 minutes earlier, so just to give yourself some leeway there. And when we got into the port, we just handed our large luggage to the staff out there. So when you do drop off your luggage, make sure that you have it tagged with your room number, with your name, because they're going to take your large luggages, check it, and then deliver it to your room later that evening for the first day of the cruise. Now, what I like to do is I use cruise tags. They're these plastic reusable ones I got off Amazon. I'll have them linked in the description if you're interested, but I bought these like 4 or 5 years ago and I've been using them ever since. They are reusable and they've been lasting a long time, so I definitely recommend them. They're pretty affordable too. Once we dropped off our bags, we headed inside. We were supposed to arrive around 11:30. We got there at 11:15, so we got there a little bit early. It was not an issue. They just got us in line, but you have to bring like your carry-on luggage and any purses and stuff like that with you. So there was a bit of a line, but it was fast moving, so I didn't really have an issue there. But basically, they scanned your luggage, and then you went to check in. They took our photos, scanned our set sail pass, looked at our ID, and then we got on the ship. So it was very straightforward, very streamlined and quick, which I really liked. It was nice for a change, especially since my last cruise, we had to wait like an hour almost just to get on the ship. So it was really nice that they kind of just streamlined everything and we got on very quickly. Now, as soon as we did get on the cruise ship, they prompt you to do your muster drill, which is your safety drill on what to do in case of an emergency on the cruise ship. So basically, you're gonna find your emergency station. All of that will be on your SeaPass card, and if you download the Royal Caribbean app, it's gonna be there what your muster station area is. We went there, they asked us if we watched a safety video, we did. They asked us if we listened to like alarm sound, listened to that. And then they kind of just marked us off and said, enjoy your cruise. So that was the check-in process. It was very straightforward. I really do like the check-in process at Cape Liberty Cruise Port. The staff there are just very on it. They know what they're doing. Now, after we finished our safety drill, of course, the first thing you're gonna do on a cruise ship is eat. Odyssey of the Seas, being a quantum cost cruise ship, is pretty big, and it did have a good amount of food options that I think most people would enjoy. Now, they do have options that are specialty dining, extra charge, and then they have options that are complimentary included in your cruise fare. Now, this cruise ship did have a few different specialty dining options. So there was Azumi, which is a Japanese restaurant where you can go and get sushi, sashimi, fried rice. There's also teppanyaki, which is also a Japanese cuisine, but this is a different vibe. So this is a sit-down experience where the food is cooked in front of you, so you get dinner and a little bit of a show. And another option on board is Wonderland, which is the Alice in Wonderland themed restaurant. I think it's a great option for kids. I've tried it in the past and it's very fun. You get to paint the menu, to reveal what's on there, food that looks like it's not what it is. Another option we have is Giovanni's Italian. So if you want to get some nice pasta or pizza or just great Italian food, it's a good option. Another option is Starbucks. So if you want to go and get your Starbucks fix at sea, complimentary, you can do that. Another option, Playmaker Sports Bar and Grill. Basically a sports bar, so you're gonna be watching a bunch of games, you can drink, and they also have some food there as well. There was an Irish pub, while not a specialty dining like option, it was a bar that had food, so I'm gonna include it. And the final specialty option is Chef's Table, which is basically a experience you pay for where you get a multiple course meal. I think it's like 7 courses or something. And it's all kind of high dining food. And I did try some specialty dining food, but I definitely think that you can get away with just cruising with the complimentary food. Now, when it comes to the complimentary food, which is what I ate 99% of the time, there's a good amount of options for you. So the first one is going to be the main dining room. Classic fine dining, restaurant experience. You sit down, you order with your waiter, they bring your food. There's multiple courses of food. The main dining room did have themed menus, which would change daily. There was like Italian food, there was Mexican food, a bunch of different types of themed menus. Now, another option for food that's complimentary is the Windjammer, which is an onboard buffet open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Windjammer, much like the main dining room, did have themed kind of days. They would change up what they had, especially for dinner. Now, you can get things like burgers, fries, sandwiches, you can make salads. They always have a bunch of desserts, grab and go. They had different types of meat carving stations and just a lot of different food options there for you. Now, another option for food is Sorrento's, which is the onboard pizza shop. Now, Sorrento's was just open for lunch and dinner. They would have your classic cheese, your pepperoni, your veggie, and they'd have a different pizza of the day. Something I liked about Sorrento's is that being gluten-free, I was able to request a gluten-free pizza and get it really fast. So I did appreciate that. The pizza was very good. Right beside Sorrento's, we have Cafe Promenade, which is kind of like a little sandwich shop, coffee shop, and they had little sandwiches, desserts, fruit that you can request from the counter. Now, another included option is ice cream. So they did have a soft serve ice cream machine by the poolside, and they did have the classic vanilla, chocolate, or the swirl. Now, another included option, which is only available to suite guests, is Coastal Kitchen, where you can get some fine dining food, and it was typically like more of American style food there. Now, another option for food that's included is Cafe 270. So this is another onboard sandwich shop, but it was a lot bigger than Cafe Promenade. And this was actually a shop where you could make your own sandwiches, and they had to-go sandwiches, bagels, wraps all ready to go, as well as an assortment of desserts all ready to go, open for breakfast and lunch. Another area on board to eat complimentary was Solarium Bistro, which was another buffet experience, which had a bit more kind of like fresh selections, healthier options than the Windjammer. And you do have the option to order food as well. This was complimentary, but you did need to make reservations to go there. And the last option that was included complimentary was El Loco Fresh, which was Mexican food on board. You can make your own tacos, nachos, things like that. Now, when it came to the food, I overall had a very good experience with the food. I thought there was a good amount of variety as well. And I'm gonna be doing a video just dedicated to food on Odyssey of the Seas because I ate a lot of food. I wanna share everything I ate with you guys and go more into depth on the service and everything there. I did eat at some specialty dining restaurants in addition to a variety of complimentary places. So stay tuned for that review, which will be coming soon. I like to talk about demographic in my reviews. It's something that I do notice on a cruise ship and something that I think some people find important that nobody really talks about. So if this section's not for you, skip to the next one. But talking about demographic, I'm gonna start off with the ages on board. Now, Odyssey of the Seas, being a newer cruise ship, has a lot of, things that attract children, a lot of things that attract adults. You saw a huge mix of age groups on this cruise ship. 50% of the demographic was between their 20s to their 50s. There was a lot of families. And when I say a lot of families, there's probably I'd say 35% families. Now, there were families with little toddlers, babies, families with teens, tweens, kids, and there was a good amount of children on board because of that. Now, for me, not an issue at all, but I did want to mention that. Now, in addition to the families on board, there was a lot of different couples. There were couples in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and up. There was a lot of different couples on board. I did see a lot of groups of friends and groups of families as well. In addition to that, there was a good amount of solo travelers too. I also did see there was solo traveling events where you can go to meet up with others and kind of hang out. Now, when it came to an older demographic like seniors, I define seniors as 65 and up myself. So when it came to that, there's around 15% of seniors on this cruise ship. So a lot more than I actually thought, because this is a big cruise ship, a lot of walking involved, but it was kind of nice to see that group as well. You'd always see them showing up at different shows and stuff. Now on my sailing, it was about at 90% capacity. And the top 3 nationalities was number 1, United States, American. Number 2, Canada, Canadian. Number 3, China, Chinese. So those were the top 3 demographics of, countries people were coming from to go on this cruise ship. I did think that was pretty interesting, because out of that number there, we had 3,723 American guests, 734 Canadian guests, and we had 171 Chinese guests. Now in total on the cruise ship, there was 4,973. So they made up a huge portion of guests on this cruise ship. And I thought that was pretty cool to see, especially as someone who's Canadian. I was like, wow, there's a lot of Canadians on board. Now when it came to the race demographic, it was about 50% Caucasian or white, 25% Black, 20% Asian, and then there was 5% like Hispanic and Latino. So there was quite a mix there, which I actually really like to see. It's pretty cool seeing that this cruise ship was just so multicultural for the guests. And I also found out, in addition to the passengers on the ship, there was 1,600 crew that came from 75 different countries. So pretty cool to see that as well. Overall, a lot of people on this ship. So when it comes to activities on Odyssey of the Seas, that's something that I think they excel at. There's just so much activity, so much things to do. Sometimes when you're on like a smaller cruise ship, and when I say smaller because most cruise ships are huge nowadays, but for example, when I was on Independence of the Seas recently, I did notice that sometimes I'd be like, okay, maybe I want to do something, but for that hour, there was maybe like one activity to do, and maybe I didn't want to do that activity. But on Odyssey of the Seas, there's just constantly stuff to do, and every hour there's multiple things to do, so you really have a large variety of activities. Now, one activity that you can do is Ripcord by iFly, which is indoor skydiving. Now, this is free, but you have to book it, or you could pay to do a longer session. That's an option too, and it's honestly really cool. I've done it, it's really fun. So I definitely recommend doing that. That's an activity that is exclusive to Quantum class ships that I really enjoy. Another activity that's on Quantum class ships is the North Star, which is basically this like giant glass dome that travels above the cruise ship to get an aerial view, and then it travels over the ocean. It's a really cool experience, but unfortunately on my sailing, it was broken, so I didn't get to do it. But I have done it on previous cruise ships, like I did it on Anthem. Cool experience, which I definitely recommend. Now, another activity they had was laser tag, which you can go and play all ages, always a lot of fun. And this is also something that you did have to book in advance. Another activity was the surf simulator, which is also free. You gotta book it though. And you can take your try at surfing, either standing surfing, boogie boarding, going on your knees. They had a bunch of different options of surfing that you can do. Now, I haven't tried it myself, but I do enjoy watching people on it, and I think one day I'll try to do it, but not this cruise. Another activity you can do is play bingo, which I always love to play bingo. That's something that they held, I believe it was like 3 different times on this cruise. Another thing they had was a Seaplex, which was a giant kind of like sports area and arcades. Inside the Seaplex, they held the different sports. So there was soccer, there was pickleball tournaments, there were bumper cars there, always really fun. That was included complimentary. And they had archery, which was pretty cool. I've never tried archery before, so that was really fun. In addition to that, they had an arcade on the side where you can play a bunch of different arcade games, like driving games, and they had giant Connect 4 and more. And one thing I want to mention is that overlooking the Seaplex on the 2nd floor, you can see Playmaker's sports bar, and that's actually an area there where adults can go and drink, grab a bite. What I thought was pretty cool is that you can be up there keeping an eye on your kids below, playing downstairs. So a lot of fun activities in the Seaplex, and my favorite thing about it is that it's all covered with like a roof, temperature controlled AC. Most cruise ships don't have that. You're usually stuck outside playing sports and stuff, which is fine, but if it's really hot day or if it's really cold, it could be uncomfortable. So I really like that the Seaplex is the entire covered area. So another activity you can do is ship tours. If you want to pay for that, you can tour the cruise ship, and they bring you all in different areas where the crew can only go, and you can see kind of what happens behind the scenes. There is, of course, swimming. You can swim on board. They have a huge pool. They have multiple hot tubs, and they had splash away area for kids to partake in. Now, in addition to that, they did have a adults only solarium, which was basically an area that had a pool and had hot tubs for adults only. You do have to be 18 and older to use that. They also had like a top deck where people can sunbathe as well. So another activity was they had board games. There was board game tournaments. They also had word searches, crosswords, puzzles that you can do. There was books that you can take and read. There were different classes like sushi making, cupcake decorating, there was jewelry making, towel animal classes. So they taught you how to fold towel animals, which if you've been on a cruise ship before, you always see these cute little towel animals on your bed. I did learn how to make a dog and I made an elephant. So those are skills I'm taking forward. Now, another activity you can do is of course gambling, go to the casino. The casino was huge and they had a bunch of slots and they had a bunch of different tables, all your classic games there as well, so the casino was an option. All right guys, so in addition to all the activities I mentioned, there was a nightlife on this cruise. As I mentioned to you guys, the main demographic was 20s to 50s and people like to party. I'm talking every single night there were people at the nightclubs, people dancing, some people drinking, having a good time, and they had different themed nights. So they had a 70s night, they had a shush party, which is when you're basically wearing headphones, so it's like a silent party. You could change the channel of the music that you're listening to, which is pretty cool. In addition to that, they had a white night where, you know, you're just wearing white. They had a red night where you're wearing red. They also had dance classes you could take a part of, whether you want to do Latin dancing or dancing to popular songs. In addition to singing, they did have karaoke. Another activity on board is art auctions. So you can go to art auctions and look at beautiful pieces of art, bid on art. You can also go just for the free champagne, or you can go for the raffles for a chance to win. I did get lucky this cruise and I did win a free work of art. Super excited about it. I literally just got it back from the framer, so I'm gonna show you guys that. I'm just gonna rip it open. So here it is, guys. What do you think? I absolutely love the way it turned out and the framing and everything. This is the one I chose. They did give, I think, like 6 options of different paintings. They did have a teen lounge and they had activities for babies, toddlers, young kids, older kids, basically up to 17 years old. So if you're bringing kids with you, they're not gonna be bored. You can honestly just be like, here, go to the teen lounge or go to the kid area and then meet up with other kids their own age. And there are staff there that do activities for them, like different types of like art activities. They go to arcade, they do sport tournaments, they watch movies, they play video games. So a lot of different things for your kids to do as well. And if you are going on this sailing with babies, you can drop your little ones off at the nursery, but keep in mind that the nursery is not free. There is a small fee that goes towards that. But if you're someone, maybe a couple, and you want to have like dinner together without, you know, caring for the baby just for a bit, you can bring them to the nursery. I really think Odyssey of the Seas is great for having something for all ages. Now, when it comes to entertainment, it differs from activities for me, because entertainment for me is like I'm sitting and watching something, I'm not necessarily participating in. Now, there were original production shows that Royal Caribbean made. There was Showgirls, which was a show singing, dancing. There was The Effectors, which had like Royal Caribbean superheroes, and they had drones and stuff, which was pretty cool. There was The Book, which was another show that was kind of like acrobatics based. Got to see some cool tricks there. In addition to that, there were game shows. So there was like the Love and Marriage game show, which they pull guests from the audience of different marriage lengths, from newlywed to kind of married for a few years to married for decades, and ask them different questions. So that's always fun to see. Shows on board were okay. I'm not gonna lie, the people were talented, but yeah, it's just not really my cup of tea, but you might enjoy it. Honestly, I prefer like watching ice skating shows, but they didn't have ice skating, which I miss because there's no ice skating rink on this ship. And they had some Royal Caribbean classics like the Sexiest Man competition, and they had the belly flop competition, which the belly flop competition is always one of my favorites to see. It's just funny. This was one of the best belly flops I have ever seen, so I'm definitely gonna include that, show you guys that now.
very special guest now that is here. All the way from
I really hope it's Santa. If it's Santa.
And now, the final one. His father was the winner of Benny Club in 2005 on the Onboard of the Sea. His grandfather was the winner of the Benny Club in 1999 on the Freedom of the Sea. His grandfather
Oh, is it that guy?
was the winner of Benny Club in 1992 on the Ranger of the Sea. Hey, where you going? Where you going? Come here, I need to hear my God. This is a perfect song. I thought it was going to be good, but not that good. Can you play it again?
My favorite thing was the musicians on board. Now they had like cover bands doing different types of rock music and Caribbean bands. They had Latin bands. They had a bunch of different genres of musicians as well as pianists. They had guitarists. So much music on board, and the music was all amazing. So I applaud the musicians on board, and I'm just gonna show you guys some of the music here. And of course, people watching is a form of entertainment. There are chairs all over the ship, so if you just want to sit down in a comfortable chair, watch people by the pool or inside the ship, the promenade, wherever, like when you have over 4,000 people to watch, like sometimes you're bound to see something interesting. Another thing about entertainment is that the main dining room on the last night put on like a bit of a show. The staff members, they were dancing, singing, so that was really fun to see. All right, guys, so now let's talk about the room. So when you are staying on a cruise ship, there are a variety of different room options that you can choose. You can choose interior, which is no windows. You can choose an ocean view, which you have a window to the ocean. You can choose a balcony, and you can choose a suite, which is very large rooms. Usually they have balconies, big views, bunch of different options for suites as well. Now, I was in a balcony for this sailing, and I really enjoyed my room for the most part. We decided to do solo cabins, 2 side by side on the sailing, because when we were booking, there was just a very small difference between having 2 solo cabins versus having 1 regular balcony room. So we did that, and we actually really enjoyed it. It was nice because the room sizes were good, enough for 1 for sure. And it was nice to have 2 beds, 2 bathrooms. Our stateroom attendant was actually able to open up the balconies, divider opened. So we were able to kind of go back and forth between the rooms. The balcony that I had was huge, chairs were comfortable. There was great AC, good amount of towels. I found it comfortable. The TV was big. I really like that the bed is just right across from the TV here. It's a really nice view. And the actual bed here is quite comfortable. It is firm. Most Royal Caribbean beds are kind of medium to firm. This one's definitely firm. Now, my stateroom attendant was very good at certain things. For example, he came at consistent times daily, so I didn't really have to guess that he was coming. He made the bed always. He would make sure that he would pick up any like plates we had in the room or any garbage or anything, replace the towels. You know, he vacuumed the floor. Anytime we had a request, like we requested robes, extra blankets, got that quickly as well. So he was very nice. He was like quick, but the only downside for him is that he didn't actually clean our bathrooms once. So when I say clean, I mean like using cleaning products, you know? First night I was brushing my teeth and toothpaste, like a glob of it fell off of my toothbrush onto the sink. That was there the entire sailing. He didn't wash that once. The toilet had a poop stain in it on the first day. He didn't clean that once. It was there the entire time. And the shower, he never cleaned it once, never wiped down the shower. So like he didn't actually clean in the bathroom, which was very frustrating. And I don't know if he was just like, it looks fine, I'll leave it. But like, how do you just leave like the toilet like that, the sink like that for 7 days? Like, I don't know. And actually my husband had the exact same experience. The bathroom was not cleaned. One downside of my room is that we didn't know it was above the smoking section. So we could hear sometimes noise from the people in the smoking section having conversations, which, hey, people watching. But also, it was annoying because of the smoke. But when we were actually moving, it wasn't really an issue because it was windy, so the smoke wouldn't like waft over. But on sea days, when you're just like sitting there, we did notice the smoke to be an issue, and it's a bit annoying. So the location was great because it was right near the dining room. I just had to go down a couple floors. The elevator was really close to the room, and it was an area of the ship that it wasn't really moving much. Like it was a middle cabin, the lower floor, so I didn't really feel much motion. So overall, the room location, I liked it, but I didn't like it just because of, you know, the smoking thing and then the attendant issue. All right, guys, so this cruise ship did have a spa and fitness center. So if you're someone who wants to go to the spa, let's say you want to have a facial or a massage, a pedicure, haircut, anything like that, they can do that for you on the cruise ship, all for an extra cost, of course. And they did have a gym on board, which had all the standard stuff like the machines you could use, treadmill, stair climber, ellipticals, bike machines. They had different weights, they had different weight machines. They had yoga mats in case you wanted to just do yoga. They had an open space for you to kind of stretch out as well. So they really had kind of stuff for everybody. So I thought the gym was pretty good. It was at the forward of the ship though. And when I did go there in the morning, I did feel some motion. So it was hard for me to do like my calisthenic workouts there. So I did find myself honestly doing them in the room. I had a huge balcony and I used that. I did calisthenics in the morning, which was kind of nice. I had to see the breeze and it was a big space to do that. Anyways, the gym, there was also classes that happened in there on the daily, usually in the morning. Like they had calisthenics classes where you're going to be working out following a trainer. They had yoga classes, there were spin classes as well. Some of the classes were paid, some of them included in the cruise. And in addition to that, I actually did do some morning stretch classes, but they were outside and they were at, I don't remember what it's called, but it was this giant like ball thing. They were in there and it was kind of nice to do some stretches. There were stretching classes and different classes that you can do for free. Now, when it comes to the Wi-Fi on board, I did purchase the Stream and Surf package. Want to make sure I can keep up with like my YouTube channel and post content if I need to, stay connected, stuff like that. So when it came to the Wi-Fi on board, it was great. Everywhere I was on the ship, I had connection. It was quick. There wasn't any buffering. The only negative for me was like if I'm trying to upload a video to YouTube, it took a long time. I tried to upload like a 3-minute video. It took like, I think it was 2.5 hours. So that's quite slow. And I did try to download some content to watch on my phone that I could take with me to view on the plane. And that took about, I think, 1.5 hours to download like 3 videos that were 20 to 50 minutes in length. So a bit slow when it comes to downloading things and uploading, but for just like streaming content, web browsing, I had no issues there. Now, my only downside of the internet was that it's expensive. And this was even a sale price, but it was pricey. So that's something I don't like. It's just the internet has been getting more and more expensive over the years with Royal Caribbean. All right, guys, so when it comes to the cleanliness on boards, was the cruise ship clean? I would say for the majority, yes. The staff took their time picking up stuff. But I will say that the passengers probably make that hard because there were over 4,000 passengers on this cruise ship. But I did usually always see some type of plates and cups and stuff somewhere, whether on a table, on the floor, somewhere from guests. For example, if I'd walk by an area and I see like cups like, you know, on tables, it might take people like 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes to pick them up, where on some other cruise ships, usually that's gone in like 10 minutes. So a bit slower here when it came to that area. In addition to that, I saw people cleaning, but it wasn't constant like on some other cruise ships. I'd say like occasionally I'd see someone like dusting or cleaning a window or something, but I didn't see it like a lot on this cruise ship. So that was something that was a little bit different for me because usually I see people cleaning all the time. So I'd say it was clean, but it wasn't like as clean as some other cruise ships that I've been on. Another thing I noticed is that they had hand sanitizer stations throughout the ship, which I really appreciate, and hand wash, you know, soap and water stations. I really love to see, like I saw that at a Local Fresh, I saw that at the main dining room as well. So clean hands are a great way to prevent getting sick, especially when you're around thousands of people. And when it comes to cleanliness of the bathrooms, like the public bathrooms, they were clean. Like I never saw anything dirty. People who were in charge of those bathrooms did a great job. They were always clean. You could even smell like cleaners in the toilets and stuff, like they were cleaning. So that's why I was a bit salty about my stateroom, that he didn't clean the toilets or anything, but overall pretty good, I'd say, the cleanliness. It wasn't perfect, but I'd say it was good. All right, guys, so when it comes to the service on this cruise ship, overall, I'd say fantastic. Now, I talked to a lot of different staff members on this ship. I got help for different things, asking questions in general. I did a lot of activities and entertainment, and the activities crew was just great. I went to guest services a couple times for different things, and they were always just polite. They were efficient, they were friendly. They were always able to solve my issues or help me with whatever the problem was. When it came to my main dining room staff that I dealt with, which was my waiter, my assistant waiter, we also had a head waiter come up and help us out because I had eating restriction. Fantastic, like all across the board. Now, everyone I dealt with in the food places were really friendly. One caveat I do want to say is that my husband, he did go to try to get me some gluten-free cookies, and people, he said, were like brushing him off. And they were like, oh yeah, like I'll help you in a bit. And they didn't come back after like 15, 20 minutes of him waiting. So he did eventually speak to like one of the managers, and the manager said, yeah, it's gonna take me 15 minutes. And he thought the guy ghosted him, but he actually came back after 15 minutes. So he said it took him like an hour to try and find some gluten-free cookies because everybody kept brushing him off. Another issue I had with customer service was I did eat at a Zoomy, and one of the waiters there was very annoying. Now I'll go more into this in my food review, but everything else was overwhelmingly very positive. Staff there, you could tell, were like caring, they were friendly, they'd always greet you when you're walking by. Very nice and pleasant to interact with. There were definitely some pros that I wanted to shout out for Odyssey of the Seas. First one would be food options. There was a lot of food options available on board, and I also really liked that the food was sent out pretty quickly.
Another pro for me is that the ship was pretty well laid out, and they had activities going on constantly throughout the day, all throughout the ship, all over the place. So it never really felt too crowded or congested in one area. Even in the food venues, most of the time there was hardly any lines other than going to Windjammer at peak times when it's super busy.
Another thing is we had a cruise conductor who was Canadian, which was awesome. I've only seen 2 Canadian cruise conductors in all of my cruises, so that was nice to see. Another huge pro for me is that most of the shows and activities and everything you're doing was just you show up, first come, first serve. There was no need to book on the app. So I really like that because I hate that like the Oasis class ship and larger cruise ships are just forcing you to do everything in the app. The old cruise ships and the Quantum class just let you show up and watch a show. There might be a little bit of a line, but hey, if you go early, you could just sit wherever you want. So it lets you be spontaneous if you want to just see something last minute, for example. Another pro for me was that in the room, they have Chromecast built into the TV. So I was able to stream content off of my phone directly on the TV without any wires or anything involved. So I personally love that. I know sometimes people would try to bring HDMI cords and like hook them up to your laptop, but like being able to stream off your phone is just a game changer, guys.
So with the TV here, you can connect it to streaming services. So basically, you can use Google Chromecast to stream directly from your phone. So if you have an internet package, that means you can stream Netflix on your phone, YouTube on your phone, you know, whatever other service that you have. So I'm just gonna give you guys a little bit of a demo here. I'm gonna type in the code on your phone, connect it, And now it is connected. So now on my phone, I'm just gonna go into YouTube and I'm just gonna put on one of my recent videos for you guys. Now you're just gonna need to go to the little Chromecast button, select the right number for your TV. They're all different. I'm gonna click 216. It's now connected. I'm gonna start the video on my phone. And here you can watch whatever YouTube video you want. So I really like this because I did get the internet package and I'm able to just watch whatever I want. The actual shows they give you are very limited. They just have like maybe 20 channels and like 5 of those are sports. So it's nice to be able to just watch whatever you want on here. And you can also use your phone, you know, it's a little remote here so you can pause. You can turn up and down the volume. And you can skip and create playlists.
Another thing I thought was cool is that they had the Tell Animals classes on the TV, which I've never seen before. And that let me follow along in my stateroom using the towels versus just going to the in-person classes, which they also had. But I thought that was pretty cool that they did that as well. And of course, another thing I thought was a pro was like the cool quantum class only experiences, like the iFly that was there, the North Star while not working, but I think that's also a cool experience to see when you are on a quantum class ship. And a big pro for me was having a large balcony in my cabin, because you never really know what type of balcony you're gonna get till you get on the ship. You can't really tell the sizes from the pictures very well, so that was definitely a pro for me and a surprise that the balcony was huge. So when it came to the cons on this cruise ship, there were a couple that we noticed. The first one for me would be there was a lot of announcements and they were loud. Now on the first day, all the announcements will go straight into your stateroom. They're very loud. They're going to be constantly like, hey, make sure you're doing the safety drill. They did that like 10 times.
All you need to do is check in with the teams at your assigned assembly stations. You can find the location of your assembly station on the Royal Caribbean app. Guests who have just joined us, and for the 627 guests currently on board the Odyssey of the Seas who have not yet completed their mandatory guest safety briefing.
In completing your mandatory safety briefing.
That goes away afterwards after you set off, but there's always loud announcements. So that's something that I do find to be annoying, because in some of the old ships you can like turn down or up the volume, but you can't do that on this ship. It's just loud.
So one con for me about this room in particular is that this bed is just a little bit short. I am 5'8". When I lie down, my feet are just like slightly off the bed. So like this much off the bed. So it's a little bit annoying. And I found myself having to kind of like trying to sleep sideways or like sleep this way diagonally. So I can, you know, not have my feet dangling off the bed. It's just a little bit short for me, so if you are someone who's taller, this could be an issue for you. Like my husband, he's 6'2", and he has to like curl up.
Another con I noticed was there was always long lines for the elevators. In the early morning, because I'm an early riser, if I'm up at like 6 or 7, not really lines, but pretty much every other time throughout the day, there's lines. People wanting to go up to the windjammer or the pool deck or wherever. So that was definitely a con for me. I did have to take the stairs a lot because I just couldn't bother waiting for the long lines. Another con for me is that the cabins were not very soundproof. Now, it might come down to the type of room you have. For example, I had a balcony room, so there's the ocean from there, there's this room, and then there's the door. Now, I will say, between the rooms, you could hear things. For example, you could hear somebody like coughing really loudly, or you could hear someone talking really loudly, for example. You could not hear TVs on, you could not hear like normal volume conversations, you could not really hear much, but you could hear like shower sounds sometimes, or somebody coughing, things like that. From the door, you could hear people like running by, or kids screaming, or things like that. From the balcony, I didn't really hear any ocean noise, I didn't hear any people talking. Not the most soundproof Odyssey of the Seas, so that could be an issue for some of you there. I don't know, maybe the walls just aren't as thick as some other ships, because even when I was on like Enchantment of the Seas, you couldn't hear anything. That's an old ship. Another con for me is that there was a few activities that you did have to book in advance, and they sold out like fast. I'm gonna say fast, like first day. Now, I wanted to book everything in advance, but a lot of the activities you had to book when you actually got on board. I remember I was telling my husband, I'm like, oh yeah, let's book first thing when we get on the ship. We got on the ship, we went to eat food, I forgot about it, dinner time came, I'm like, oh no! This was like 5 p.m. the first night. Everything was booked. Everything booked between like 11 to 5. So we couldn't do any of the activities that we really wanted to. Like we couldn't do iFly this time. I got to do it last time I was on Anthem, which was great. I couldn't do laser tag because that was booked. Couldn't do surfing, that was booked. Fortunately, there was a lot of activities that I didn't have to book and I could just show up and enjoy. But my advice to you would be like, as soon as you get on the ship, book that because it's gonna go really fast. Another con for me, and a big one that a lot of people experience, was overcharging. I've never had that issue before on any other ship, but for some reason it happened. Now, I went to bingo and I was overcharged by $10. I didn't notice until afterwards looking at the receipt. I'm like, wait, like I paid this much for the thing and there's a $10 charge, like what? I didn't get that for like these like popper things that I never got. And I didn't know they charged it to me until afterwards because they just hand you a receipt. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. And then I went to like customer service. I'm like, oh, I got charged $10 more. I didn't get this thing. And they're like, oh, you had to bring it up at the time. So too bad, nothing we could do. So I ended up getting charged $10 for that, for something I didn't get. And I actually heard like 4 other people were like, hey, I got charged $12 here. I got charged $50, didn't get it. There's issues with the charging. Another thing that people had issues with overcharging was auto gratuity tips. Now, some people had prepaid their tips, but they were still getting charged for it daily on the cruise ship, which shouldn't be happening. And then for me, we were like double charged on like 2 days for tips. And also another charging issue, we went to a specialty dining restaurant. They ended up adding like $5 more to the tip. We didn't add that in. Like, I don't know what was going on with the accounting or there, but they were able to fix it for us at customer service. So one thing I would say, check your receipts if you're specialty dining, if you are playing bingo, if you are buying anything, check your receipts because I did see multiple issues. Another con for me was that the North Star was broken. It was down the entire ceiling. Now, the North Star is a big kind of feature that a lot of people find cool on Quantum class cruise ships. As I mentioned to you guys, it's like this glass dome that goes really high in the air and you could see the cruise ship from an aerial view, you could see the ocean. It was broken my entire sailing, which was really disappointing. And they didn't make any announcements or anything. It was just like, if you had the reservation booked, it was canceled and nobody knew why. So I feel like they should have made an announcement in all of their million announcements to address that. Another con for me, which I already mentioned, but my bathroom was never cleaned with cleaning products. Like they never cleaned the toilet, the sink, anything. So that was frustrating. It makes me even believe that he didn't even clean it before last guest was there. So that was definitely frustrating because I did walk by and saw like spray bottles and things on his cart. So I'm just like, another con for me and something that I've also never experienced, the photographers in the port were like so bad. I don't know what they were doing. Like, and I'm talking about the Royal Caribbean photographers who take pictures of you off the cruise ship, waving by the ship, all that. They were bad. Like, they weren't directing anything. They were just like, okay, stand over there. Thanks. What's your room number? When we looked at the photos, it's like, bro, this was out of focus. This one, my husband was standing here, so his shadow was on my face. You can only see half my face. Like, they could have given direction and said, hey, step back, step forward, do this, do that. They did none of that. So it was really disappointing because I usually like getting photos. This sailing, I only really bought like 1 photo for memories, and I was disappointed because of the shadows and everything. Some of the photographers on board were really great, but whoever went out into the ports was doing a really bad job. Something else that can be a con on Odyssey of the Seas is that it's big. So if you're someone with mobility issues, that could be a con for you because walking from one end of the ship to the other can take like 7 minutes or so. So that's just one end of the ship. Imagine you're walking from like deck to deck and all over the place. Like, it's just a lot of walking in general. So that can be an issue for those with mobility issues. Another con for me was bingo. Now the host, the games she chose were like the worst games ever. Like we had to play 4 corners. We had to play 1 line. So like all the numbers she was calling were like in the same like letter. They'd be like G this, G this, G this, G this, I this, I this. Like, I just want to play a regular game of like do an X or you know, do 2 lines or something, but they were all like really stupid bingo games that were meant to be done really quickly. And the last game, usually most cruise ships for the last game, you would play like maybe a full card or something. I literally heard her say outside the microphone like, oh yeah, I gotta go like do another event after this, so we're not doing full card. Pfft, no way. And I'm just like, I want to do full card. Like that's like my favorite one to do. But yeah, I didn't like that the bingo games we were choosing were like ones that were designed to like literally the games ended like 5 minutes each. Like they were so fast, and I didn't like the planning of it that they would have pre-sales and then they would have an hour of sales and then you start bingo. I don't see the point of that. If you're gonna have an hour or 2 of pre-sales, just have maybe half hour before the game starts and start it. Like having people wait for an hour, like doors open at like 2 and then we start the game at 3, like it's just too long, too much waiting. So bingo, in my opinion, wasn't planned the best. Another con about bingo is that Compared to previous cruise ships I've been on, Bingo on Odyssey of the Seas was, you got less for your money. So if you're buying the most expensive package, which I think was like 69 or 79 or something, you got a lot less physical cards compared to what I got on like Independence of the Seas, Freedom of the Seas, other cruise ships I've been on where I played bingo. So I didn't like that. I kind of felt like ripped off a bit because I got a lot less. And I did ask about that and they're like, oh yeah, every cruise ship has different rules and different prices and different things they offer for their bingo. But I'm just like, well, most of the cruise ships I've been on have offered a lot more when you get their highest tier package, but it is what it is. All right, guys, so now let's talk about the ports of call, where I visited on this cruise. Now, the first one was Perfect Day at Coco Cay, Bahamas. One of my favorite cruise ports ever. I like that it just has everything that I need. They have things like pools, beaches, water park, adults only lounge, and more. There's swimming, there's sun, there's food, there's a bunch of seating, towels, like just everything you really need to just chill and have a good time. And I like that I can go there and not spend any extra money and just have fun. Another thing I really like about Perfect Day is that you don't have like people hassling you to buy things like that happens in other areas. It's just completely private island by Royal Caribbean. You go there. You can pay extra for things like zip lining or going to the water park or adults only area. But if you want to go for free, there's beaches you can go to, there's pools you can go to, there's free food that's included in your cruise fare. So you don't have to spend extra if you don't want to, but I just like that there's just something for everyone there. The weather was nice, it was not too hot. There was no rain, it was just clear skies. It was a perfect day. People kept saying that on board. They're like, did you have a perfect day? I'm like, yeah, perfect day. The next stop, the next port of call was Nassau, Bahamas. Now in Nassau, when we were there, there was 4 other mega sized, like huge cruise ships in the port at the same day, at the same time. It was crazy. There was like, you couldn't even walk. There was so much people. And I was like, I'm going back on the ship. I am not dealing with this because that day was super hot. Anyways, when you are in Nassau, you have a chance, you can just shop locally. It's about a 5-minute walk and then you can shop in the little shops there, or you can go take a quick trip to the beach. You can go to local restaurants, whatever you really want. In Nassau, you do have people who are gonna try to sell you stuff like, hey, buy my bracelets or buy this shirt or something. So if you do wanna buy that stuff, souvenirs, take home, you can do that. There's bunch of people around you to buy stuff from. You can also pay to go to Atlantis. This time I just honestly headed back to the ship. It was too hot and too much people for me, but my husband did go around and try some like food and yeah, did some sightseeing and stuff. I don't know why they would schedule like 5 huge ships at the same time. Like, you guys need to understand that there's like at least 4,000 people on each ship. 4,000 times 5, like 20,000 people potentially walking all around. Like, it was so much people. And then on top of that, they had like this like festival going on. So there was like Bohemian people as well for the festival. Like, it was crazy. So not my cup of tea. I had a good time on the ship, honestly. There was like hardly anyone there. I went to the solarium and I was chilling there for a while. And then I went to the Seaplex and did some activities. Like, it was really nice. There was like no lines. So I had a good time. My husband did say that a lot of people were like trying to like pickpocket in Nassau when he was there, so he didn't like that. I don't like that. And the last port of call was Orlando, Florida, kind of Port Canaveral area. We stopped at the Port Canaveral cruise terminal, and when we were there, we did some shopping. We also tried a restaurant. So we went to the restaurant called Fish Lips, which I personally really like. We try to stop there every time we go to Port Canaveral. It's like 5-minute walk from the cruise port, really good. And they had a good amount of options, including gluten-free options. They have seafood and they have like a lot of fresh food options. So I'd recommend it if you want to give it a shot close by. There's also a couple other restaurants if you wanted, you know, other options there. A lot of seafood restaurants. It was good weather all throughout the days of my cruise. Nassau was a bit hot for me, but the other days were quite nice. Now, Odyssey of the Seas is a pretty new cruise ship. I mean, it just came out in 2021, so because it's new, it's pretty expensive compared to other options. Now, the price of your sailing can fluctuate depending on the itinerary you're going on, the time of year, the time you're booking it, and more. Now, we did have balcony rooms. I'm gonna give you the price for the solo as well as for the regular with taxes and fees. The price for a solo balcony per person was $1,993 Canadian, or
$1,457 American.
And the price per person for a 2-person occupancy regular balcony was $1,543 Canadian per person, or $1,123 American per person. Now, of course, if you were gonna go for an interior room, you could save hundreds of dollars there, but we did want a balcony this time. I do think that this cruise ship does have a lot of activities, a lot of food options, a lot of things that kind of make it worth it. However, I do think it's overpriced. I would have preferred to spend a couple hundred less. I think that would have been more reasonable, but I do completely understand that the newer the ship, the more expensive it's gonna be. And just for, you know, reference, if I'm gonna go on the Icon class, it starts at around like $2,000 Canadian per person. And that's for like interior or ocean view. So definitely it gets more expensive as you go up. I like to book my cruises at least like 2 years in advance, 1 year if I can't help it, but then you get time to kind of pay it off over the year, so it's not as bad. But that was the pricing. A lot of the time Royal Caribbean will send you emails if they have like unsold rooms to do Royal upgrades, Royal up. So you bid on a stateroom and then you have a chance to get that stateroom if you bid the best and they choose your bid. So when I was sailing, actually, they had balconies on like super duper sale. The starting rate was $70 per person. So if you were an interior, you could have upgraded for a really good deal. Now the prices for the Royal Ups are always fluctuating, but I thought that was super surprising to see $70 was like the minimum bid for a balcony. All right, guys, so now getting to the end of the cruise, I'm going to talk about the disembarkation process, which is getting off of the cruise ship. So on the last night of your sailing, if you want the cruise ship to take your bags, when I say your bags, I mean like your big bags, you pack them up, you leave them outside your door tagged. They're going to meet you outside the cruise ship in the port for you to pick up there. Now, I opted to do a self-carry, carry my bags off, because we wanted to check out when we wanted to, because otherwise you have to go by their schedule. So basically they'll give you a color and they'll say, hey, green gets off the ship at 8:30, red gets off the ship at 9, this, whatever, like it's timed. So we were set to set off the ship, I think at 8 o'clock, and I'm like, yeah, that's a bit too early. So we decided to just self-carry, because when you self-carry, you can get off anytime you want. And you also can get off the earliest. If you have like an early flight to catch, definitely self-carry. Basically in the morning, we went to go eat. We went to the main dining room, we had a breakfast, and then we took our bags. We literally walked down, we were on the 6th floor. We walked down one floor and there was the gangway to get off the ship. So then we just walked off the ship. They looked at our SeaPass card. We walked a bit further into the port, scanned our face, walked a bit further, we were out. Like that was it. It was so simple and quick and easy, and everyone was kind of just like, go this way, go this way. So it was basically impossible to get lost. The whole thing took about, I think, 15 minutes or so. And most of that 15 minutes was waiting for an elevator to get from like the top of the cruise port to the bottom floor, because we had big suitcases and we're not taking the escalator. But very quick process. I would definitely recommend Cape Liberty. It's a great cruise port. In my experience, it's always been very kind of quick and efficient. Now, going on Odyssey of the Seas, I had a great time overall. There were definitely a lot of ups, some downs. Now, considering the price of the cruise, the customer service, the food, the entertainment, the room, the activities, and more, I'd go ahead and give Odyssey of the Seas an 8.5 out of 10. I definitely do give it a thumbs up. Now, if you guys are looking to go on Royal Caribbean's Odyssey of the Seas, I've gone ahead and left a link down in the description for you to use. And if you've never been cruising before, let me know if you're gonna consider it after watching this video, if you wanna try it out. Now, I do have some more cruises already booked and coming up for 2026 and for 2027, so make sure you're subscribed once again so you're not gonna miss that content. And let me know if there's any cruise ships in particular you want to see me check out. Drop that in the comments below. And if you've ever been on Odyssey of the Seas, let me know your experience down below as well. Did you have a good time? Did you have a bad time? Share it with me and the community.
Now, if you got to the end of this video and you're thinking Odyssey of the Seas is not for you, maybe it's just too expensive, maybe it's too big, too much walking, then you might want to consider Royal Caribbean's Enchantment of the Seas. It is a smaller cruise ship. It's also a lot more affordable and gives you classic cruising vibes. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my full review linked in the description below. And my cruise on Enchantment of the Seas was less than half the price of what I paid on Odyssey. So definitely an affordable option.
And that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.